When you were at school, did you ever have to do that exercise where you wrote about where your life was going to be in 5 years' time? I know we did, and I think it was probably in our last year of school, and I think it was intended to kind of take us on that transition from childhood to adulthood by making us think about what jobs we were going to have, and think about owning our own home, and think about marriage and all these kind of grown-up things. But I don't want to dwell on the past or what I was thinking about back then. But I was thinking, what would I write if I was trying to do that today, now at 54 years old in 2026? If somebody said to me, write where your life is going to be in the year 2031, I honestly don't know what I would put. I mean, have you ever had this problem? Have you ever thought about this? I mean, let's take jobs as an example, because obviously everything we do in life revolves around earning money. Just to survive in a civilized world, we need to have money. So unfortunately, like it or not, jobs is what our lives seem to centre around. But where's that money going to come from? Unless you're stealing a tent and going and living in the woods, you need some form of income. I mean, for example, I pay one company for the water as it comes into my house through the pipes, and then I pay another company as it leaves my house through the drains. So I'm basically paying twice for the same water. And unfortunately, I need water to live, which means I'm always going to have some sort of income from somewhere. So in the year 2031, where's my income coming from? And it's a tricky situation. The way things are now, with we seem to have an ever shrinking job pool in some industries, and there's every year there's more people coming into those pools with their shiny degrees and their 5-year plans of what they want to do with their life. But then again, the older people aren't leaving the job pool because they're having to work until they're 80 years old, because for whatever reason they haven't got pensions, and then they have no way to actually afford to live without working. So you're just having this problem of the shrinking pot of more people coming in but less people leaving it, and unfortunately it sort of comes to a bit of a head, really. And now obviously I don't want to dwell on the obvious age concerns, where as you get older nobody wants to hire you. That's obviously a very real concern, but it's not something I necessarily want to dwell on here. And I'm also not condemning the young people coming into the job market, because at the end of the day I was there once, and I sort of understand that's what they have to do. But it just makes it very difficult to actually plan ahead and think, where am I going to be? Where is my life going to take me? I mean, as it stands at the moment, I'm living in a rented house. I'm not married, because I never really met a woman who I felt comfortable sharing my life with, if that makes sense. Or to phrase it another way, I never felt that my life was in a position where I felt happy to share it. Because you always see, like women say they want a man who has his life together. Well, I've never really felt, and then this could be due to my own kind of internal critic saying this, but I never felt in a space where I did have my life together. And now, looking forward to the next 5 years, I don't know whether I'm going to have my life together. So it becomes this problem. Everything revolves around this notion of having your life set in place, having this sort of secure job that's going to provide for you, and that everything that you want in life has to come from that job you've got. And if that job isn't there, then everything else in your life just falls into uncertainty. I feel at the moment I'm a bit like a Jedi Knight whose vision of the future has been clouded by the dark side or something like that. It's very difficult for me sitting here to even think what the solution might be to this, to even think, to even try to see how the situation will get better regarding work or income. I think as I get older it's going to be more difficult, because even industries that I've worked in for, I have 38 years of working experience behind me, but that's been primarily in the engineering industry, and more specifically shipbuilding. And shipbuilding is just dying out in the south of England here, and that's not something that I can change. That's something out of my control. But on the other hand, if you find yourself in a dying industry, it's becoming more and more difficult nowadays to jump to a different industry, because you don't have the background and you don't have the experience, and every industry is becoming more and more compartmentalised, making it very difficult to take a sideways step between industries. But basically you're going into an industry with no experience at all, no specific qualifications in the industry, but then you're competing with however many thousands of people might be coming out of college or university every year and going into that same industry. But the difference is they've already got the specific qualification in the industry, and they're also young enough where the company is prepared to actually spend some money on training them for the future. At the end of the day, if you're my age, companies aren't really interested in spending money to retrain you. At my sort of age, they are expecting somebody who can just come in on Monday morning, sit down and get on and do the job, which is fine if it's my industry. If it's the shipbuilding industry, yes, I can do that, but it doesn't make it very easy to jump to another industry. So again, it makes the future very very shaky, and it makes everything else just become uncertain. Because again, back when I was 16 and I was just entering the world of work, because I actually started working in a shipyard when I was 16 years old, but there was always this notion that you would work for the same company for 40 years, and then you would be given a gold watch and a handshake, and then you'd go off to live this peaceful life in your retirement, just living off your pension that you had accumulated, and and that would be it. But unfortunately, certainly from my experience, that doesn't happen anymore. It's very rare for somebody to be able to stay in the same job for 40 years with companies closing down or merging or relocating to some other part of the country or some other part of the world, and you can't follow them wherever they go, and also because of the rise of sort of short-term subcontract work, where companies aren't hiring full-time employees anymore. They might hire you for 6 months or a year or 2 years, and then after that you get laid off again. And then when you get laid off, it could be 6 months until you find the next contract, and during that time any money that you've saved is basically going on paying the bills. So by the time your next contract starts, you're back to zero again. And if you do that for any amount of time, it can make it very difficult to actually ever accumulate any savings for your retirement or put any money into a pension. So you then find yourself in a situation where you think, well, I'm just going to have to keep working until I'm 80 years old, because the day I stop working is the day that I can no longer afford to live on this planet. And that's unfortunately the reality. But the knock-on effect of that, again going back to what I said earlier, is that if people are now working until they're 80, then where are the jobs supposed to come from for the younger generation who want to move into the working world? It was always tradition that the older people would retire, the younger people would come in to fill their places, and you'd have a few years of overlap between the older generation and the younger generation. But now, if people are going to be working for about 60 years, then in theory that's sort of 2 generations of new people could try to get into that market. So it's just becoming more and more dire. And then again, going back to my original kind of question, it makes me think, well, how can I even predict where I'm going to be in 5 years' time? At this point, I don't have a clue. I don't see the job market getting better. Not in this area. I don't think anybody's suddenly going to build a new shipyard just up the road, for example. I mean, they've only recently closed down the shipyards they already had here, or the ones that were left anyway, which were already in a fairly sorry state of affairs. So it's just tricky. I mean, over the last couple of decades, I've been thinking more and more that I don't want to put my future in the hands of some company, somebody else's company or somebody else's corporation, because at the end of the day, the person who should care the most about me is me. So why would I want to put my future in the hands of somebody who basically just views me as a human resource? I feel like the only way to have a secure future now is to actually take control of it yourself, and to actually try to find some sort of income that you're in control of, so that so that corporate mergers or relocation or whatever can't just suddenly snap that away from you one day. And obviously that's easier said than done, but it starts to get to the point where you think, well, what's my option? I can sit here every day and I can browse through job listings, hoping that suddenly one day some magical companies appeared in the area that I never knew existed. I mean, the alternative is, like, you see as companies wanting you to travel halfway across the country and spend your life living in hotels to work for them because they've decided to relocate their company to Scotland, and now they find they can't get enough workers in Scotland, so they're now expecting people from the south of England to travel to Scotland to do the work for them because they decided to move the company. But I don't want to do that. I'm at that age where I've spent enough time living in hotels just to get jobs. I don't want to do that anymore. I want to be able to come home to my home every night and sleep in my own bed. I don't really see why after 38 years of working, I'm still having to live in hotels just to actually earn some money to pay for a house that I'm not even living in because I'm in a hotel. So yeah, that's kind of my takeaway theory at the moment. If I'm really thinking about what I'm going to be doing in 5 years' time, the only way I can have any certainty about that is actually if I'm living off income streams that I've created and that I control, and that to some degree nobody could take away from me. Although nothing's ever certain, obviously. If you put anything on the internet, there are algorithm changes and rule changes and all sorts of other things that can mess it up. But I still think it's something that I have some control over. At the end of the day, if somebody decides to close a factory down that you work at, or close an office down that you work at, then you have no control over that either. So at least I feel I have some bit of control. But what do you think? Have you Have you tried to exercise lately? Obviously, I don't know what age range you're in, but if if you sat down and thought, right, where will my life be in 5 years' time? Can you do it? What's your general view? Do you have an optimistic view of where your life's going to be in 5 years' time, or do you have this cloud of uncertainty like I do? Let me know in the comments how how you view yourself. If you're a young person just setting out in the world, do you view your future as as rosy? If you're older person like I am, or middle-aged person, how do you view your future? Are you are you looking forward to retirement, confident that you've got all your savings in place? Or do you have this kind of sort of nervousness or trepidation that you really don't know how you're going to be paying for yourself? Let me know, I'll be interested to hear. But until then, try to focus on the positive, not the negative, and I'll see you soon. Bye for now.